So far, we've mainly talked about how to understand conflict and the different types and the definition and so on. But let's turn our attention to how people respond to conflict. Now, theorists have been studying conflict for a long time, and one of the most useful breakdowns of the different types of conflict is broken down into 5 levels. But basically, the way that these 5 areas are discovered is by thinking of the intersection between your personal goals and the group goals. The more invested you are in your personal goals versus the group goals determines what type of conflict stop you tend to use. So these 5 different areas are basically broken down into low, medium, and high interest in either your personal or group goals. I think it'll become a lot clearer once we get into each one of them. Let's take the first conflict style, which is known as avoidance. An avoidance conflict style has a low personal investment as well as a low group investment. That means that the individual doesn't really care about their own personal goals, and they likewise don't care about the group goals. When you have low investment in both of those levels, it's usually a result of people that find it hard to assert themselves. And it doesn't often lead to very productive outcomes. So avoidance is one of the conflict styles that we are trying to avoid, ironically enough. The second conflict style is accommodation. Now, this is similar because it has a low personal investment. That still means that the individual doesn't really have much invested in achieving their own personal goals, but they still have high group investment. They really want to make other people happy. So think of the title yet again, accommodation. The individual is trying to accommodate the group while they give up their own personal goals in favor of the group goals. This is not ideal on the surface because that means that you are sacrificing some of your level of investment and maybe even happiness or satisfaction in order to accommodate the group. But there are some times when accommodation might be really appropriate. If you don't really care all that much about that particular outcome, but you do think that the making a decision is really important, you can accommodate the group. It's not always necessary for you to confront or create that conflict. Perhaps you changed your mind, or you just think it takes way too much energy to persuade the group to your way of thinking. Any one of these might warrant an accommodation approach to conflict. The next conflict style is competition. This is where you have high personal investment but low group investment. So if you think about it, you look at the group as a win-lose scenario. I need to win, that means somebody else has to lose. Competition. So high personal investment means that you really care about your own sort of personal goals and achieving those personal goals, and you care very little about whether or not the group achieves its goals. This is not the optimal way to approach group conflict either, because it tends to divide the group into winners and losers, and that's something that you want to avoid. Keeping that in mind, sometimes competition is actually really appropriate. For instance, if there's really serious consequences that might befall the group because of a bad decision that they're making, you might want to assert yourself and compete with other people in an attempt to win, especially if it's for the betterment of everyone as a whole. The next type of conflict style is compromise. Now, this is where you have medium amount of personal investment and medium amount of group investment. Compromise means that you are willing to give up some of your personal goals or achieving personal satisfaction in order to meet the group halfway. This is often considered a very positive way of approaching things, but there are drawbacks to it. Not only do both sides win, both sides also lose. So there's equal losses on both sides, and that's not always something that you should necessarily strive to achieve. It also means that there's only partial satisfaction within the group members. Partial satisfaction is not something that you necessarily should, strive to achieve, and you should try to aim higher than that. But compromise might be the way to handle your conflict if there is no other way to deal with the conflict at hand. Sometimes you just have to find a middle ground if everyone seems really intractable. The last conflict style is collaboration, and this is the conflict style that we strive to achieve every single time. That does not mean that you can. Sometimes people are at odds way too much to collaborate with each other. But collaboration means that you have high personal investment in your goals as well as high group investment in the group's goals. Since you have high investment in both of them, people seek out how to create new solutions to problems, and they look for win-win proposals so the group and the individuals both feel satisfied in the end. Of course, collaboration is ideal, but it's not always possible. Sometimes, depending on the situation and the group that you're in, you have to make a decision about which conflict style is best suitable for the event at hand. Regardless, these 5 different types of conflict styles are a very helpful way to look at your different approaches.